Hey, it is week 8. Bradley Stalder, Ryan Reynolds back with you for Man versus Machine. Ryan, I was driving to school this morning because for those who don't know, like my day, like I have a day job, that is not fantasy sports. And I'm driving to school because I'm a principal of a school. And I'm almost there. I'm like a mile and a half from school. And I get a notification on my phone that DeAndre Hopkins is traded to the Kansas City Chiefs for like conditional picks. And I'm like going 70 miles an hour as this pops up on my phone. I'm like, oh no, like I need to get this to the news desk as soon as possible so we can get some content out for the people before I start my day. We had a 7:15 meeting this morning. And that's how my day started, Ryan. So how was your day?
I mean, I was sitting in a chair when I saw that notification, so a little bit safer for me. But this is my second show on the day job myself earlier, so I'm I'm running on fumes a little bit here, but we'll make it happen.
We will make it happen. Ryan is making it happen with the facial hair. For those who've been following all season, mine has been attacked a little bit. The Razor Monster got it, and that's how we're working right now. So, nevertheless, we are going to talk in Man versus Machine today about rest of season outlook, some players that may have league winning potential. Ryan and I are going to debate how much potential they have, what their outlook will be. And then we're also going to take a look at the Player Profiler rest of season rankings. So I posted 8, and I may give more for Ryan to discuss, but 8 sets of players that are back-to-back or very close in the Player Profiler rest of season rankings. And we're going to see where Ryan and I fall in terms of where these players should be ranking. So without further ado, I think the most obvious rest of season league winner is Christian McCaffrey. Like, he's going to be back very soon. We are about halfway through the best ball regular season. There's been more positive drumming about McCaffrey getting back. And we did not anticipate when we were drafting him, consensus 102, 103, whatever it was, that he would miss the first half of the season. But the second half of the season is fair game. Jordan Mason dealing with injuries here and there. Garendo's had his ups and downs. When McCaffrey gets back, it's going to be all Christian McCaffrey, especially with, Debo's been dealing with his injuries. Kittle was on the injury report today. Ayuk, the most obvious, news item from San Francisco, he's out for the season with the torn ACL. So I think McCaffrey leads this list as the most obvious answer. Like, he's stashed on your IR. You're going to plug him in. Potential league winner, Christian McCaffrey. That's why we were drafting him 101, 102, 103 this year. What are your thoughts on McCaffrey?
Yeah, I mean, if you have him, talk about getting a boost if and when he comes back. You just said he's close, and San Francisco's down. He's down. They're down Ayuk for the rest of the year. Deebo Samuel, he just had pneumonia, so that could go in a few different directions. But he was the 101 for a reason. Last year, I literally changed the team name to Christian McCaffrey basically carries me every week. So I agree. He's definitely, if you have him, you couldn't get a bigger boost.
Yeah, the pneumonia thing for Deebo Samuel, we'll take a spin off for just a second. Deebo missed most of Week 7's game due to the illness that he was questionable going in. He was reportedly hospitalized as a result of this pneumonia. Will be trending toward playing, but I wouldn't be surprised if San Francisco holds him out, for Week 8 as well, given the proximity to getting out of the hospital. Shanahan was non-committal as of today of whether Deebo would play. At least he's trending in the right way. But the last week and a half, 2 weeks, my daughter got pneumonia and she wasn't hospitalized, thank goodness. But like she was in dire straits. We didn't have to take her to the hospital, but it wasn't good and had to put her on breathing treatments the whole bit. So like she's 8 years old, but you have a professional athlete who's dealing with pneumonia and has to be hospitalized. That's not a nothing burger, Ryan. So the San Francisco offense, they've experienced I sent Billy Muzio, friend of the show, one of the originators of Man vs. Machine. I sent him a meme last night and I said the healthiest wide receiver for the San Francisco 49ers was shot in the chest 50 days ago. So
yeah. I mean, you know, not to be I love Pearsall. I mean, he's a bad dude, so I have nothing negative to say there. But like, it is a good thing for McCaffrey too. You know,
it's a very good thing for McCaffrey that all these injuries are piling up. All right, Ryan, I talked about in the opener about DeAndre Hopkins. Hopkins gets the trade done. He moves to a contender. There had been rumblings about Hopkins and him shifting teams, whether via trade or release or whatever the case may be, even stemming from this offseason. But it finally happens. Kansas City gets their guy. Do you think that this was eventually going to happen? Or was it prompted because of the Juju injury, along with all of the Rashee Rice and Marquise Hollywood Brown injuries? Do you think it was just an accumulation or was inevitable?
Probably accumulation. It's a good question, though. I think they might have tried to run it through with Juju, especially since they won a title with him in this kind of position. So, but on the other hand, I think if this came across the board for a 5th round pick, like who cares about a 5th round pick? I think they would have pulled the trigger anyway. But the thing that I like about it is he can conceivably sit in the slot like Rice did, catching little slants. That's the bulk of what Rice's massive production was coming off of. I don't think. And then on the other hand, like if say like is Hollywood Brown out for the year, or is he like?
I think that's the rumblings that he's going to miss the season.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because so if he's not coming back, and obviously Rice isn't coming back, I guess Hopkins playing the bulk of his snaps on the perimeter probably isn't on the table. But in the event where they need to do that, that's he's a 50-50 ball guy. He can help them in a variety of ways.
Yeah, so our initial projections for Hopkins, a 22% target share on the Kansas City Chiefs rest of season. So that would put him as the wide receiver 1 on the team, even ahead of Travis Kelce in terms of, projections. Looking at what that is overall, Hopkins, wide receiver 20 in the rest of season projections for Player Profiler at this time. How do you feel about that ranking, Ryan?
Yeah, I think that's fine. It's, whenever you get a new veteran receiver, it's going to take a couple weeks for them to get acclimated to the offense. I'd imagine he's going to have an easier time than most people would, given that he's played for a number of teams and a number of systems. But yeah, I mean, over the next 2 or 3 weeks, he's probably going to be, start him if you have to, where down the stretch, he'll be more of a factor, would be how I'd expect it.
Or he could just Amari Cooper it, to start, get a tutty and, 4 catches for, 50 yards. Very fantasy relevant first week.
He could, especially with the Raiders on deck. He certainly could.
Ooh. Davante Adams, 9 targets in his first game with Rodgers, back with Rodgers. But that was not good from a fantasy perspective, but great indicator that chemistry is still there. So DeAndre Hopkins, top 20 wide receiver rest of season per the Player Profiler projections. We also had a long-term injury occur at the end of the Tampa Bay game Monday night. Really unfortunate issue with Chris Godwin. We saw Mike Evans leave that game early as well. The early indications are that Mike Evans is supposed to miss at least 3 games plus the bye week. So we're looking at week 11.
Yeah.
For Mike Evans. Chris Godwin gone for the year with a fractured ankle. Is it Jalen McMillan who's going to step up, or is there going to be another player, another wide receiver for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
I threw my darts at Jalen McMillan. I think he has the best path, especially in the Godwin role eventually, because now you have the 2 spots for the next 3 weeks. Like, they're going to need, I don't really view him as a wide receiver 1 type player, but once he's in more of a complementary role, I think that might actually end up being better for him, at least from an efficiency standpoint. But out of that group they have in Tampa, he's the guy I took shots on.
Yeah, he's the player that has the most unknown upside. We know what Trey Palmer is. He is a super speed, deep threat, couple big plays here and there. He was a fast player, ran 4.29, 4.3 flat, like very, very fast guy. He's got the dog mentality too. Cody Carpentier had him as one of his highest dog rating players. If you're looking for like scouting for personality, Trey Palmer is up there, but he's not great at being an overall wide receiver. So I don't know if he blossoms necessarily in that way. But then you have in the slot, who's been playing very often there is Sterling Shepard, the former New York Giant. What are your thoughts on Sterling Shepard as more of a full-time player now that those 2 players, now that Godwin and Evans are dealing with that injury?
I mean, my first thought is every time I've seen Shepard this year, it's like, I actually can't believe he's still in the league. But he is in this spot where he's not Chris Godwin, but he kind of has a similar skill set. Like, again, crossers, drags, quick slants. Like, he's shown in the past too as a Giant that he can have weeks where 7 for 70 is completely on the table for him. So, I don't think he has a ton of upside. But like, if you're in trouble this week and you need a PPR asset, like, I'd be willing to roll the dice on him.
Roll the dice on a nearly 32-year-old wide receiver who's dealt with an innumerable injuries. We look back, he tore his Achilles twice. He had an ACL injury, most recently week 3 of 2022. It's been some disaster zone injuries for Shepard the last couple of years. I mentioned, you said surprised he's even back in the league, but he's also 71st among wide receivers in explosive play rating, which
makes a ton of sense. Yeah.
He does not have, what do they call it? The juice left.
Yeah. There's no juice.
He's got no juice.
Absent of juice.
No. Oh, poor Sterling Shepard. What was once a very interesting player, like back in 2017, top 20 wide receiver, 2019, top 25. Like, he was always a 11 to 15 fantasy points per game type of player. And then dealing with the injuries as of late, the age curve caught up with him. And now he's getting an opportunity with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin dealing with injuries. So I agree with you, Jalen McMillan, the best bet. But also, if you're in large leagues and desperate for guys who have pulses, I think Sterling Shepard is a higher floor than your Trey Palmer type.
Agreed.
All right. Well, Ryan and I are going to continue to talk about some potential league winners. We're actually going to look at like the quarterback position. We usually don't talk about too many quarterbacks in man versus machine, but we're going to do it. Potential league winners. Cedric Tillman is also in this conversation that's coming up, and then a few rest of season rankings that we'll discuss. But before we do, we have a word about the player rankings here at Player Profiler.
Oh, every week I'm answering these start-sit questions on Sunday morning. I go to the weekly rankings on PlayerProfiler.com just to make sure that my instincts are correct, and sometimes they're not. And guess what? More often than not, I go with the projections. You may not feel great about starting Daniel Jones or Wan'Dale Robinson, but the projections say, hey, that's the move. It may not feel right, but you use those projections to get it right. That's the power of the Player Profiler system. It's Evan Ringler, it's Bradley Stalder, it's Theo Greminger, of course, it's Billy Muzio making these rankings possible. The season rankings, so you know who to pick up, who to trade for. The Dynasty rankings are part of this. The offensive line rankings from Dan Fornick, one of the best in the business. Then we get our cornerback rankings, which show which corners are matched up with which wide receivers. And now, in collaboration with the IDP show, we have IDP rankings. Did you know that? Did you? So go to playerprofiler.com, use promo code PODFATHER. Get you 25% off the player rankings package right now at playerprofiler.com. Enjoy!
That's right. That's right. Enjoy the Player Profiler rankings. Ryan, I finally get my flowers.
They put you in the group, man. Well deserved.
We're into week 8, finally getting the flowers there for the player rankings. We got a quote today from Cameron Wolf. Dolphins wide receiver Tyreek Hill called Tua Tagovailoa's practice performance today, quote, beautiful. In his message to fantasy football owners, we're back, baby. Strike up the effing band. We're back, baby. Start me this week. Let's go. Buy or sell Tyreek Hill plus Jalen Waddle plus Tua. Are they potential league winners in the second half of the season?
League winners is I definitely like them this week. I don't know if I'd put Tua in the league winner category. I think he's definitely a guy with tremendous matchup upside in certain games, but Hill definitely can be. Hill could be the wide receiver 1 going forward. And with Waddle, I mean, now we're talking about kind of a long, I wouldn't really call last year like a very enthusiasm driving year for Waddle, where this year, obviously there's been nothing. But so I won't call him a league winner. I'll call Hill a league winner, and Tua can be in certain matchups.
Yeah, Tua very much defense dependent, Mike McDaniel dependent, Tyreek dependent.
Yeah, for sure.
Game script dependent. Well, a player who's been rising in the fantasy football ranks in terms of fantasy points scored, Drake Maye. He's been the quarterback 10 and quarterback 7 each of the last 2 weeks against Houston, against Jacksonville. Yet maybe better matchups, like nice matchups, but you can't ignore that he's played in a way that gets you fantasy points. Sure, you got to do it. He does face the New York Jets this week, an extremely difficult matchup. Jets allow the 3rd fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks. Not great, but long-term, like rest of season, not necessarily just this week, but does Drake Maye have we've streamed him and now we're just going to continue to start him appeal?
It's a very good question. I like how you frame that. How I'd probably put it is, like Dak Prescott, for instance, I don't think he's a plug-and-play quarterback most years, but he's a guy that you start in 80% of your matchups. I think May is at least close to that, where you start him as a baseline start, but like, for instance, against the Jets, I probably wouldn't play him. But when they play Miami, I'm putting them in. If they play someone like Arizona, I'm putting it in. If they play Detroit, I'm putting them in. So almost is how if I was going to put it in one word.
Well, with Jane Daniels possibly missing week 8, I think Drake Maye is a nice little plug in, even with the tough matchup against the Jets. I think that you're going to get some fantasy points from Maye.
Yeah, I think that's fair, especially since, like you said, you don't really need. He's a good complement with Daniels too, who's probably going to get banged up. Like he took some brutal hits in college. He didn't really get hurt on a gruesome hit this week, but I think Drake Maye is actually perfect insurance for Jaden Daniels.
Love it. Drake Maye, league-winning insurance policy. How about that? We're maybe getting TJ Hockenson back? ? Officially questionable for the Thursday game against the Rams. Officially questionable. The Minnesota Vikings beat reporters said that he, quote unquote, looked good stretching during practice. So take that for what it is. TJ Hockenson, though, arguably the tight end 1 last year before the injury. Could he be the tight end 1 in the second half of the season?
I think he's at least in play for it. I think Brock Bowers is in the position where he's probably going to continue to be tight end 1, but if Hockenson was tight end 2, pushing towards tight end 1 from here, or for when he starts, I think it would be surprising if he played on a short week. It would make more sense if he started up next week, which is, probably a little ahead of schedule.
I was targeting like week 8. Well, he had to be out for 6 games, right? So
Yeah.
it was weeks. Yeah, he had to be out for 6. So this is the week he could be coming back, but we'll see. We will see if Hockenson can make it back. However, the 21-day window was open for Jonathon Brooks last week, and he was also on the physically unable to perform list due to an ACL injury suffered last year, just like TJ Hockenson. But unlike TJ Hockenson, Jonathon Brooks has a little bit more competition. Chuba Hubbard has played very well in the first half of the season. Feels like Ryan and I talk about Chuba Hubbard and Jonathon Brooks as like players that we're monitoring very closely in their situations. But Jonathon Brooks, he was the number 1 running back in this class for a reason. Like, he showed up and showed out, even in the small little play that he got behind Bijan Robinson when Bijan was back in Texas. He still looked very good. So Jonathon Brooks, sure, if he's strung along for a couple games, but I think he does get the majority opportunity near the end. Is that the right way to approach Jonathon Brooks for the rest of the season?
Yeah, I mean, that would make sense. Carolina's going nowhere. They're losing every game by 3 scores. Andy Dalton just got in a car accident, so Bryce Young's going to be forced into action against Denver. So my guess would be they're going to ease him along. But once money-making season comes, weeks 15, week 16, week 17, why wouldn't they be seeing what they have in him for next year? Because, again, this is already a lost season for Carolina.
Yeah, lost season for Carolina. They're in play yet again for the top draft pick in the 2025 NFL rookie draft. Well, a player that we were waiting on and had not been getting much love from the fantasy community had been Mark Andrews. Now, during the first 4 weeks, Andrews had more than 2 targets in a game just once. And he hasn't exceeded 60% of snaps since week 2. However, we've seen him more involved in the passing game despite the smaller snap share over the last 3 weeks. 4 for 55, 3 for 66 and a touchdown, 4 for 41 and 2 touchdowns. There's been a concerted effort to get Mark Andrews the ball just a little bit more. He's been the tight end 6 and tight end 3 over the last 2 weeks. How are we to interpret this Mark Andrews situation? Is he now just a touchdown dependent tight end 1? Or can we have more confidence in Mark Andrews being a consistent contributor and therefore a tight end league winner rest of season?
That's a great way to frame that. I do think he's a top 5 tight end, probably top 3 tight end going forward. And there's 2 reasons for this. One, he is a little touchdown dependent. He always has been. But from a pure football standpoint, the idea of zone read with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, where you're going to have to suck up all the time, it's going to create avenues for Andrews for the rest of the year. And I don't think the volume will be there just because they have so many options all of a sudden. But yes, I think he's a plug and play now. If you held him, you did the right thing, and you're gonna get paid off for it.
Yeah, Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson have been offensive player of the week each of the last 4 weeks. It's been wild. These Baltimore Ravens have been going absolutely nuclear. Your Derrick Henry shares are what's carrying many of you to the fantasy promised land. Yeah, it's delightful. In my home league, I have Derrick Henry, and one of the guys, he was going to beat me because of the Jaden Daniels injury. I had started Daniels, and he only scored me 6 points in that league. Derrick Henry came through for me and bailed me out of that situation. But the Baltimore Ravens, major buy. Like, we haven't seen a sign of Derrick Henry really slowing down. Like, give the big dog more work, and he will eat. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been incredible, honestly. I mean, I remember I wrote in week 2 that I wish we got to see Lamar Jackson and prime Derrick Henry because that would have been a spectacle. And here we are. It's no signs of slowing down. It's been remarkable.
It has been beautiful. All right. So Isaiah Pacheco. Perhaps we've forgotten about Pacheco. I kind of forgot about Pacheco. Like, He's supposedly suffered a 6 to 8 week injury on the injured reserve. Before going on the injured reserve, he was the running back 20 and running back 16 in the first 2 weeks against a tough Baltimore defense. And then he suffered the injury against Cincinnati. 189 total yards in those 2 games. He was getting involved in the passing game, all that. Now we're into week 8 and we're starting to think, okay, Pacheco should be coming back sometime soon, is now starting that 6 to 8 week window. How are you approaching Isaiah Pacheco, given that literally every other running back option for Kansas City failed except Kareem Hunt? So how are you approaching Isaiah Pacheco coming back and the role that Kareem Hunt would have when Pacheco returns?
That's actually a good question too, because it would make some sense if he was essentially saved for the playoffs a little bit, where if they eased him in. But I mean, for me, like if I'm in a situation where I have 1 loss or fewer, and I'm a little dicey at running back, which I'm saying for a reason I have a few spots where that's the case, I might try to buy low on Pacheco and just hope he plays through the fantasy playoffs and gets at least 60% of the workload there. But I think we'd probably both agree that I don't think Kareem Hunt's getting the workload he's getting because he's been great. He's just, he knows the system and he's been better than their other options.
Such an indictment for Carson Steele. Some people were dropping 300 plus fab in FFPC leagues for Carson Steele. For reference, Kareem Hunt, he is 53rd among running backs in rushing explosive play rating and ranks 66th in total explosive plays. Yikes. Even though he's 9th in fantasy points per game. 44th in true yards per carry, Kareem Hunt. Not good.
That sounds about right from what I've seen. Yeah.
And not even a 7% target share. So he's not getting the targets. He's not efficient on the ground. It's just that he's getting a 73% opportunity share.
Right.
He's getting all of the volume and he's good enough with it.
Yes.
That he's holding off everyone else. But I think Pacheco will be better. And so, yes, I agree with you. Pacheco long-term stash. Now, an interesting player, Ryan, that you mentioned in the pre-show meeting, wide receiver for the Cleveland Browns, earning some more work with Amari Cooper now traded to the Buffalo Bills, and that's former 3rd-round pick out of Tennessee, Cedric Tillman. Now, there was some chatter. One of the mock drafters, I don't know if you remember this, Ryan, one of the initial mock drafters put Cedric Tillman as a back end 1st-round pick, mock drafted, way back in 2023. He ended up being a 3rd-round pick, not a big belief in the Tennessee system, but in the first week that Amari Cooper had gone, Cedric Tillman, 82% snaps, 12 targets, 8 receptions, 127 air yards, finished as the wide receiver 10 on running 82% of routes. Are you a believer that Cedric Tillman could be a league winner for the hapless Cleveland Browns?
Well, it's a very interesting question because with Jameis Winston in there, anything can happen. Jameis Winston's also like I zero in on my favorite receiver and I'll give you 12 targets without even worrying about coverage or anything. So I will give this caveat to you guys, though. I went back and watched all of Winston's throws. Not only did Njoku and Judy both have more targets than Tillman, their targets came first. And Tillman's big productive play, which is like a 20-yard reception, came when Winston was evading right. And let's be clear here. Winston is not Patrick Mahomes. He's not a great evasive player. Tillman was just on his side. But, Tillman also did catch a 2-point conversion. So I'd still put him 3rd in the pecking order. That said, upside-wise, sure, anything can happen with Jameis Winston. We've seen, the 30 touchdowns, 5,000 yards, 30 interceptions fiasco. So if he brings that to Cleveland, anyone who has a share of that is at least worth a dart throw.
It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting whether Jerry Jeudy steps up, whether it's David Njoku. Njoku, I think, is the big winner of this Amari Cooper trade. Massive. Is Njoku in play for tight end 1?
Yeah. I'd actually, now that you bring him up, I think if I was going to list them, would be Bowers, Hockenson, Njoku, Andrews. And for the record, too, if you didn't see David Njoku's pregame, fit as the young people call it these days, you should go look at that. That's really something.
He was Gucci, as the kids say.
I don't. It was definitely something I've never seen before. That's what I'll say about it.
At least he wore something, right? Do you remember that interview a couple weeks ago where he was shirtless and people were gawking and yikes, never mind. Maybe I shouldn't talk about it. We'll get banned for referencing inappropriate images on the Player Profiler Network. If you like the content and find this helpful, smash the subscribe button here at Player Profiler. Ryan Reynolds on X at Ryan Reynolds NFL. If you want to follow me as well at FF Stalder. I run the news desk for Player Profiler also every week at 9:00. Ryan Reynolds and I chop it up during the season, man versus machine. We've got just a couple players left that we'll be talking possible league winner situations, and then we'll chat about rest of season rankings. Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp. Puka may be on his way back. Cooper Kupp expected to play Thursday against the Vikings, but also the center of trade rumors. What type of league-winning upside do each of these Rams wide receivers have? And if Kupp gets moved, is there a better scenario for Kupp if he's moved, or is it only downside?
That's a great question. I think Kansas City or Buffalo might be better, but I think that's it. And the only reason that might be better is Nacua is eventually going to come back. And I do think Kupp would still be Stafford's favorite target if they're both at even strength. But, they're going to split that a little bit where Cooper could take over in Buffalo and he could take over in Kansas City still. So I'd say off the top of my head, those are the two best spots. Dallas would probably be pretty good, but there's crossover with CeeDee Lamb. And with Houston, he'd probably be great in Houston too, actually, but that's a very full wide receiver room. And why are you trading for Stephon Diggs if you're going to go and get Cooper Kupp? But yeah, I have Kupp on a team that's, $500 entry, one loss, like lead the league in points. I kind of don't want them to trade him. So I guess that might give you a purer answer.
Fair enough. What about these landing spots? I mean, we just had recent injuries to San Francisco and Brandon Ayuk, and Tampa Bay with Chris Godwin. Do you think either of those teams would be good landing spots? Probably San Francisco, unlikely, but Tampa Bay, at least an eyebrow raise, yeah?
Yeah. Nick Mencio mentioned this like moments after Godwin got hurt, and it clicked for me that they familiar offensive coordinator. I almost said similar quarterback, which definitely shows that Baker Mayfield's finally rising up my ranks in a real way. And as we
it's
saw,
about time, right? It's about time.
Godwin's a league leading producer for the most part. So yeah, that one's good. San Francisco, no, I'd rather him stay with the Rams.
Okay. Speaking of the Rams, we'll stick in their backfield as the last player that may have league-winning upside. Kyren Williams is getting a massive amount of work, but he's not built to handle that type of work, Ryan. He is a small little scat back type, James White type, a Theo Riddick type, being put in the workhorse role. It's only a matter of time where he's going to deal with an injury. We saw it even in the preseason. Kyren Williams, injured foot. What type of upside does Blake Corum have now that he's starting to get 10% of snaps? He's gotten 7 or 8 touches over the last 2 weeks. Starting to see a little bit of Blake Corum sprinkled in. Can we see Blake Corum be a league winner if Kyren Williams goes down?
Definitely if he goes down. And the Rams are in a situation too. If they're trading Cooper Kupp, they're kind of at least semi-mailing it in if that happens. So maybe down the stretch, he doesn't even need an injury to see significant playing time. But yes, if Kyren Williams goes down, I think Blake Corum's a borderline plug and play for most rosters.
All right. When we get back from our break, Ryan Reynolds and I will discuss the rest of season rankings for a few running backs, some quarterbacks, and very interesting wide receiver rankings. All that and more right after this.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free, and one of our key missions is to make as much statistics and information and deep analysis available on PlayerProfiler.com for free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In package to continue to make all this possible. If you can't do All In, that's okay. We have a draft kit. Or you can just subscribe to the player rankings. Those now include tight end premium FFPC ranks. Our brand new data analysis package will blow your hair back. And of course, there's our Dynasty Deluxe and our DFS Dominator. Take a moment, check out our premium services to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.
I'm the machine!
I am the machine. Ryan Reynolds also here with us on Man vs. Machine. Ryan and I chop it up every Wednesday, 9:00 p.m. during the regular season. We're here. We're talking rest of season rankings. And so one of the tasks that I do, as many of you know, not only do I run the news desk and do some of the podcasts and shows, but also I work on the rest of season projections. And so along with Dario, along with Billy, along with a few others. And I thought it was interesting to look at the rest of season rankings and say, okay, who are the players that are close to each other that maybe we can take strong stances on rest of season? And the first one that I want to throw your way, Ryan, because we've chatted about one of these players almost every week, because you've had a strong stance to start on Saquon Barkley, that he would start hot, he would catch fire, he would be the RB1 or close to it. But then we have a shift in scenario, a shift in situation for Breece Hall. Breece Hall currently the running back 1 projected for us rest of season. Barkley very, very close at running back 2. Is this the right way to rank these running backs the rest of season?
Yeah, I mean, just the pure volume Barkley's getting and the offensive line he plays behind, and the fact that he's getting as much scoring zone equity as he has, which, coming into the season was probably all of our biggest concerns. I think you have to have him on top of the list. And then, with Breece Hall, you have Braylon Allen, you have a struggling offense, you now have Davante Adams coming into play. So, yeah, I mean, I probably have more enthusiasm for Hall's second half than most do, but at the end of the day, it's Barkley has to be on top of the list at this point.
For the Breece Hall truthers out there, they will point to the fact that Hall has eclipsed 82% of snaps each of the last 2 weeks, and Braylon Allen has been relegated. And even with Davante Adams coming in last week, 9 targets for Breece Hall, 6 receptions, 141 total yards. He finishes the running back 5. Maybe things opened up with Adams drawing more attention. It's possible, as you have both Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams running wild down the field, opening up things short for Breece Hall. I think that's the argument. The best argument I can make for Breece Hall to be at the top is just that the opportunity with the new coaching staff, they've moved away from splitting it with Braylon Allen, and maybe the offensive scheme fits a little bit better. But I agree with you. Barkley is, you haven't had worries. He's the only non-broken thing in the Philly offense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's been crushing it. So yeah. I agree with you. That's one that it's hard to, I guess it's the strength of schedule. That's another thing to keep in mind, that the Breece Hall looks like he has one of the better strength of schedules rest of season.
Yeah. Again, if it happened, it wouldn't really blow the remnants of my hair back at this point. But I do think we're getting a little too cute putting him ahead of Barkley.
Okay, fair enough. We are, the man is telling us Barkley over Hall. But we're going to move on. I kind of know who you like between these two, but you can't ignore what Javonte Williams has done over the last couple weeks. Chase Brown, though, also playing very well. These guys are running back 20 and running back 21, respectively, in our rest of season projections, ahead of the likes of Ramondre Stevenson, ahead of Rico Dowdle, ahead of Najee, ahead of Nick Chubb, ahead of Rashad White. So Javonte Williams, Chase Brown. How are you, Ryan? I know you like Chase Brown, but is Javonte Williams done enough lately to sour that a bit?
I mean, it's tough. Like as you've seen, I'm sighing. I don't sigh for everything. The Denver Broncos, because like here's the thing. Like I'm, what's the term, Bradley? Strong stances held softly or weakly. I think that's very wise. Where going into the year, the Denver Broncos were like, this is a team we can basically cross off in most cases. And here they are. They're 4-3. They have one of the best defenses in football. And Javonte Williams is coming off his most productive game in a while. So I don't want to completely eliminate him and their reliance on needing to be conservative on offense to stay in games. But at the end of the day, I'm an upside guy. So I take my shot on Chase Brown, especially because if Zach Moss goes down, then you have an actual league winner on your hands. So that's my stance in the overwhelming majority of situations.
For reference, Javonte Williams, 35th among running backs in explosive play rating, 31st in rushing explosive play rating. He's getting the opportunities, 14th among running backs in weighted opportunities. The team doesn't run a ton of rush plays, which is interesting to me. They're 20th, but Javonte Williams, 3rd among running backs with 29 targets. He's getting a 13.6% target share. This is Sean Payton. We know that if Javonte won the job, that he would get the targets out of the backfield, even if he was not very efficient. 4.1 yards per carry, 4.9 yards per touch. Like these are outside the top 30 in terms of running back. So not an explosive player, as we noted, but getting opportunity and not doing anything to lose that.
Right.
Not giving a reason for Audric Estime, to take over.
Yeah, my concern there has always been is Bo Nix is not exactly he's a first-round quarterback prospect that they threw into the fire on opening day, but he's not exactly like a Peyton Manning level quarterback prospect. So pairing him behind a decent offensive line with another rookie running back that's not like a top of the draft rookie running back, I always thought Sean Payton was going to avoid that if he could.
All right, so Javonte or Chase Brown, is it still Chase Brown season, or are you making the case for Javonte?
No, I mean, it depends on your roster. Like for me, I'm an upside player, so I would roll the dice on Brown. But if there's one team I have where I'm weak at running back and I'm loaded everywhere else, so Javonte would probably make more sense there, just so I have something from running back too every week.
For reference, Chase Brown has earned at least 12 touches each of the last 4 weeks. He's been the running back 6, 11, 20, and 37 during that span. And yes, it was a tough go against Cleveland, but also Cleveland's one of the best defenses in the NFL. So, two receptions, 15 carries, 53 total yards. That's not getting it done for fantasy, but it's encouraging that he still got 57% of snaps, so you're not going to scoff at that. You're going to continue to ride, I think, Chase Brown with the expectation that he's got the explosiveness, one of the more explosive players in the league. All right. Speaking of explosive players, we are happy with both of these, Tony Pollard and J.K. Dobbins. Pollard coming off of a pretty down year, given all the volume and expectations that we had for Pollard. J.K. Dobbins, on the other hand, a late round darling. We liked the situation for the Chargers. We knew that they were going to be run heavy, knew the offensive line was going to block well. We knew it was going to be a not just run heavy, but low pass volume, need some good efficiency. Tony Pollard, J.K. Dobbins, 14th and 15th in our running back projections rest of season. How are you, Ryan, sussing out whether to go with Tony Pollard or J.K. Dobbins.
Such a bizarre thought where you said, like, you're the Chargers, we're going to be a low pass volume offense. Like, did you forget that you have Justin Herbert? But that's the reality of the situation. Does J.K. Dobbins hold up to this massive volume he's getting? Like, that's a little concerning for me. So that's probably why I'd lean Pollard, but I don't really feel great about it, especially since Tennessee's season's starting to slip away from them, where they're giving up borderline Hall of Fame wide receivers to AFC teams for 5th-round picks. So, but on that front too, Pollard's at least short-term volume is probably pretty safe.
Yeah, it seems like Tyjae Spears is going to come back this week. He did practice today, even in a limited way. I would expect that, Tyjae Spears is going to eat a little bit, but it was clear even before the Spears injury that Pollard was the running back one for Tennessee, and they'll just continue to ride him as long as they can. They signed him in free agency. He was, and they aggressively pursued him. And even if the season is kind of slipping it away, like, he's one of the pieces that works for them. So I don't think they'll move away from him either. They know what they have in Tyjae Spears, so they're just going to continue to ride this guy, and we'll go from there. So I also agree with you. We don't know enough about J.K. Dobbins long term. Every time he's been given workload, right, he's either needed to be ramped up because of an injury, or he didn't make it because of an injury. So J.K. Dobbins, a player that, maybe has a little bit more ambiguity, question marks about what could be. But we know Tony Pollard, and I think I agree with you. We know what he is, and we want to go forward with a player like that. All right. Two really underperforming quarterbacks, Ryan. I know you like a few other of these comparisons, but what were your thoughts about seeing CJ Stroud versus Patrick Mahomes rest of season? Would you rank higher if you were going forward, especially now that we know DeAndre Hopkins traded to the Chiefs?
Yeah, I mean, my reaction was this was my least favorite question because I think it's the hardest. It's very tough. They're both MVP candidates in the sense that, team success is there. The ceiling's still there. They've just disappointed through what's almost the full first half of the season. I'm going to actually lean Mahomes, because without Nico Collins, the Texans have not had a great passing game. The addition of Hopkins helps them. I think Kansas City against high-end opponents is just going to be more reliant on the pass too than Houston is. So small lean to Mahomes. Don't have a ton of conviction. I do hope both guys start playing more like themselves in the near future.
They definitely need to pick it up. Stroud currently the quarterback 17 fantasy points per game. He is the player profiler projected rest of season quarterback 10. So still not great. Like, we have Geno Smith, Joe Burrow, Jordan Love projected ahead of CJ Stroud rest of season. And Ryan's nodding his head, meaning he understands, he knows.
Yeah. I get it.
Not a surprise. Patrick Mahomes, on the other hand, does get DeAndre Hopkins, but he is our quarterback 13 projected for the rest of the season. And he's quarterback 19 with a lot of interceptions too. This was a player that a couple years ago, I made the observation, wow, he's like not getting picked off a lot. Like, there were many close call non-interceptions. And I said, that's an indication that he's a little lucky. Like, variance is going to fall the other way. And I think that variance has fallen the other way a little bit. I had been out on Mahomes, last year. He was a player that I think at quarterback 8 or 9, and people were like laughing me out of their own podcast. Like, okay. And he ends up being quarterback 10. And then I had him even lower. I think I had Mahomes at quarterback 12 or 13 for this year.
I think you had him at 13 because I remember it surprised me. I think it was 13.
Yeah, I was very low on Mahomes relative to the consensus. People love Mahomes. Like, people love Mahomes in the industry. I get it. But he was low for me. And now that's coming to fruition. And he's quarterback 13 in our rest of season projections. Thank you, Dario, for listening to me. Finally, it only took half the season and for Mahomes to implode. But here we are. Mahomes 67.9% completion percentage. That's his highest of his career. 7.4 yards per attempt, his highest over the last 2 years. It's the passing touchdowns that are just not there. The Chiefs love to run the ball. So I think the Texans will get back Nico soon enough. And that's where we'll see Stroud most of rest of season leapfrog Mahomes. But over the next couple weeks, as long as Nico's out, I think it is Mahomes over Stroud. Okay, Ryan's giving me the
No.
It's good.
It's very well reasoned. I get it. I don't have a lot of pushback against that.
All right, we've got 2 stud LSU wide receivers, Jamar Chase, Malik Neighbors, and our rest of season projections are neck and neck. Chase wide receiver 5, Malik Neighbors wide receiver 6. The target shares are there for Malik Neighbors. The downfield throws are there for Malik Neighbors. The red zone, end zone targets are there for Neighbors. But with Chase, it's about the big plays. It's about the explosiveness. And with Neighbors, the down factor is the overall environment. The New York Giants offense, the Cincinnati Bengals offense is just significantly better in almost every way. So given those pluses and minuses for their situations, how are you ranking Jamar Chase versus Malik Neighbors rest of season?
I actually think this is closer than most people would think. And the big advantage here is, like you said, in order for Malik Neighbors' scoring zone usage to matter, you actually have to get into the scoring zone, where that's less of a problem for Cincinnati going forward. The other thing is this, and I don't think most people would see this way. The Giants lost left tackle Andrew Thomas. He was a linchpin of their offensive line. They were back of the middle of the pack offensive line with Thomas, which is wildly better than they've been in years. Without Thomas, they're a disaster again. So you have a pressure-sensitive quarterback that's never really been that good to begin with, that's now in this more volatile situation, and we already saw it last week. I think that's going to hurt Neighbors long-term. So 3 weeks ago, when everyone was fine, I actually might have went Neighbors just because of the insane volume, but I'm going to go Chase here.
Interesting. We do have Chase at 5, Neighbors at 6. At 7, it's Drake London. Is that right? That Drake London is right there.
I mean, given the schedule, I don't hate that. No, I don't think that's a problem. No.
Yeah. Drake London has the 12th best strength of schedule per our projections. So Chase Neighbors and then Drake London. Ryan, in the pre-show meeting, you said your favorite wide receiver rest of season ranking comparison, Brian Thomas Jr., Davante Adams. Brian Thomas right now, wide receiver 17, rest of season projections for Player Profiler. Davante Adams, wide receiver 18, just traded to the Jets. I mentioned earlier in the show about Adams immediately getting 9 targets in the first week with the Jets. But Brian Thomas, we like the offensive pieces for the Jaguars a bit better. They get into shootouts. The Jaguars have a bad defense. The pathway to explosive games is there for Brian Thomas. Who are you taking between Thomas and Adams?
So I mean, this is super, super hard because everything, every piece of knowledge you have over the last 5 years is like, am I really not going to say Davante Adams here? And like you said, he came in after 1 week and had 9 targets, and he's taking on like a public leadership role and stuff. So it's like, oh, but at the end of the day, you have Garrett Wilson in New York, you have Breece Hall, you have One Football, and Brian Thomas is the best player the Jaguars have on offense. And I'm actually going to say Brian Thomas. And I almost want to jump out of the show after saying that.
Brian Thomas, league winner, baby. Okay, sir. Rest of season, Brian Thomas, wide receiver 17. Where is Brian Thomas drafted in 2025?
Brian Thomas will be the guy that I want to go in the 4th round, but he's going to end up going towards the end of the 3rd round, I think.
I was thinking 4th round, that 3-4 turn. Yeah. A top 35-ish player. Very interesting. I like that. Also depends on like what happens with like Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk, and like those guys may not be returning for next year, which wheels up for Brian Thomas. We might get into that like Rashee Rice question mark territory where maybe early third round, back end of the second. Remember, that's where Rice was going before the suspension issues. So we might be looking at that pathway, Ryan.
Yeah, I could see him being every year. There's a guy where it's like, I want you to go in the fourth round. You go in the fourth round for like 2 weeks, and then you're going like pick 25, and I can't take you anymore. And that's going to be Brian Thomas.
This is great. This is great. We've got two more real quick. Marvin Harrison or Jacoby Myers. They are wide receiver 32. Myers is, and Harrison, wide receiver 33. Ooh, I know this is ugly, but also interesting that Harrison was a 1-2 turn pick this offseason.
One of my favorite things about you is like you're maybe the only guy I know that would put this in here, because it's actually like it'd be like, no, you got to take Harrison, but you actually have to stop and think about it because Adams is gone and the Raiders aren't very good, and eventually teams are going to start bracketing Brock Bowers. They're going to start. It's 3rd and 8. Like Brock Bowers is going to be treated like a punt gunner soon. So I'm still going to take Harrison, especially since the Cardinals' schedule gets softer in the second half. But that one was uncomfortably close for me, Brad.
I appreciate it. I'm here to bring the tough questions. Ryan Reynolds, Bradley Stalder here with you, man versus machine, at Ryan Reynolds NFL, at FF Stalder. Subscribe to Player Profiler. We bring the goods every week. We have one more rest of season ranking, and it's David Njoku, TJ Hockenson. I know you mentioned it earlier, but let's just bring to light. Let's revisit that for a second. Where are you having Njoku and Hockenson?
You know what's funny about this? Like, I actually think I'm going to change my answer from earlier in the show. I think I leaned Hockenson second, and just the more I think about it, Njoku's the top option in Cleveland. Jameis Winston is a lunatic that will literally force passes to people, where Hockenson has to deal with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and an actual really good offensive play caller that's not going to lean on one player. So I'm going to switch, and I'm going to go Njoku as my tight end 2 going forward, and Hockenson as tight end 3.
All right, you heard it here. David Njoku, top 2 tight end, rest of season. Ryan, it's been great. Let's just scan real quick and see if there's any start sits that we can get for the good people. Would you rather have Cade Otton or Jake Ferguson rest of season?
I think I'd rather go Ferguson, but that's actually a really good question, especially given the second half volume.
And the injuries.
Yeah.
The injuries for sure. Yeah, that's a lot tougher now. Cade Otton, I think, gets Cade Otton gets some touchdown equity.
Yeah, he does.
Okay. Sending Kupp, T. Higgins, Gibbs, receiving Monty Waddle, Bigsby, Brian Thomas. Give me the Kupp side.
Yeah, same.
Give me the Kupp side. Do I think Jennings played this week? He did not practice today. Let's monitor that situation.
Yeah, it's more your arena than mine.
Yeah, I'm leaning no, but it's Wednesday.
Yeah, it's early.
Okay. I have Pollard and White. I also have Eckler and Tracy. Should I pick up Vidal, Davis, Benson, or Roshan to be league winners?
I think my order would be Davis, Vidal, Benson, Roshan.
Okay, there you go. Oh, we have to mention Jameson Williams was suspended for what it's worth. He's suspended for 2 games. I don't know. Dan Campbell refuses to comment on it, which is interesting. Usually he has a lot to say about things. So maybe
he's probably not very happy about that. You know what Jameson needs? He needs Jerry Jones, because Jerry Jones would hire a private investigator to tail Jameson Williams. And that's probably what he needs at this point. Like, hey, dude, stop doing stupid shit. Just play football, man.
12-man. I just broke a 5-game losing streak. Can I sneak in the playoffs with this roster? I mean, yeah, you got some real nice players there. AJ Brown, Murray Cooper, Kincaid, Gibbs, Achan, Hurts. Yeah, that's possible.
Yeah, I agree.
Are we buying Rashad Bateman? I'm fine with buying Rashad Bateman for not with this.
Yeah,
I'd rather have Rashee Rice.
Yeah, me too.
Unless it's and
Yeah, same answer. I'm interested in buying Rashad Bateman, not at that cost though.
I just got offered Kamara and CD for Pickens, Swift, and DHop.
I'll stick Kamara and CD, even though Kamala is playing with a broken hand.
Yeah,
that's my concern. That's my concern there.
Give me the CD side. All right. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Until next time, good luck in the fantasy football streets, everybody.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to PlayerProfiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, Data Analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.